How you doing? I'm Callan and this is Slapped Ham. Today we're talking about Halloween mysteries. From a series of strange Halloween murders to the chilling last words of a death row inmate. Join us as we count 8 real unsolved Halloween mysteries.
In the early hours of Halloween in 1981, photographer Ronald Sisman and student Elizabeth Platzman were murdered in their New York apartment on West 22nd Street. The furnishings in the apartment had been completely torn apart as if the murderer was looking for something. Police received information from a prison informant claiming that one of his fellow inmates had predicted the murders weeks before they actually happened. The inmate was infamous Son of Sam serial killer David Berkowitz. In 1977, Berkowitz confessed to killing 6 people and wounding 7 others in a series of shootings in New York City. He claimed that he was following the orders of his neighbour's dog Harvey, who he said was possessed by a demon. During the mid-1990s, Berkowitz amended his confession claiming that he was actually a member of a satanic cult and that the cult had committed the murders as violent rituals. Berkowitz claimed that Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman were murdered by members of the cult because Sisman possessed a film of one of the shootings and was planning to hand it over to authorities. The police were unable to find any evidence that supported Berkowitz's claims, however he was able to provide them with an eerily accurate description of Sisman's apartment. To this day, the murders of Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman remain unsolved. On Halloween night in 2002, University of Minnesota student Christopher Jenkins left a keg party with friends and headed to the Lone Tree Bar and Grill in Minneapolis. About 1.5 hours later, Jenkins was ejected from the bar. He was still wearing his American Indian costume and didn't have his wallet, phone or keys. That was the last time Christopher Jenkins was seen alive, and what happened next remains a mystery. 4 months later, Jenkins's body was discovered floating down the Mississippi River on its back with arms crossed. Initially, authorities labelled his death as accidental. However, his parents didn't believe the findings and sought other opinions. In 2006, Jenkins's case was reclassified as a homicide. Later that year, a man who was already in jail claimed he was present when Jenkins was robbed and thrown off the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. The lead ultimately went nowhere as surveillance footage showed nothing unusual, and witnesses claimed to have seen nothing strange occur along the busy bridge that night. With very few leads, some suggested that Jenkins may have been a victim of a mysterious group of killers known as the Smiley Face Gang, a theory developed by 2 retired New York City detectives. They suggested that during the 1990s and 2000s, as many as 45 missing college-age males whose bodies were all discovered in water at various locations across the country may have been the victims of an organised group of murderers. The detectives discovered a painted smiley face at least 12 locations where they believed the killers had initially dumped the bodies. With little else to go on, and despite the fact that no smiley face was actually found near Jenkins's body, the theory still remains a possibility. To this day, Jenkins' case remains unsolved. On Halloween night in 1986, 16-year-old Chaim Weiss was murdered by a sharp blow to the head while he slept in his room at the Mesivta of Long Beach, an Orthodox Jewish high school in New York. The following day, Detective Don Daly was called to the scene and immediately ran into difficulty with the investigation. He was unable to take statements from any of the students as it was a Saturday morning, which is the Sabbath. Being an Orthodox Jewish school, none of the potential witnesses were able to write. It's thought that the killer probably knew the layout of the dormitory as there was no signs of forced entry. There was also signs that the killer was familiar with Orthodox Jewish customs, as it appeared that Weiss's body had been moved from his bed to the floor and a window left open to allow his spirit to escape. One student came forward and said he thought the door to his room had been opened through the night, but he assumed it was just his roommate. It's possible that the killer may have entered the wrong room by mistake. A rabbi placed a memorial candle in the room that was to remain there for 1 week. The crime scene was then sealed. 2 days later, a second candle appeared in the room, but no one ever admitted to placing it there. A police polygraph of 40 students and staff also failed to reveal any leads. More than 30 years on, the case remains unsolved. No one has ever been able to explain who entered Weiss's room or why he was killed. The murder weapon has never been found. On Halloween in 1955, Marilyn Damon went to the grocery store with her 2 young children. She let her 3-year-old son Stephen wait outside with his sister, 7-month-old Pamela, who was in a baby carriage. When Mrs. Damon returned 10 minutes later, she was horrified to discover that both children were gone. After a frantic search, Pamela was found just around the corner from the store, still in her carriage. Her brother Stephen, however, was never seen again. The case went cold until 2009, when a 54-year-old man named John Barnes from Kalkaska, Michigan came forward believing that he could be the missing boy. However, after the FBI administered a DNA test, it was determined that they were not the same person. At the time of his disappearance, experts believed that Stephen may have been kidnapped and raised under a different name. It's possible that he may be still out there, totally unaware that he was taken from his birth mother when he was only 3 years old. On Halloween of 2001, 21-year-old Pennsylvania State University student Cindy Song disappeared after attending a Halloween party at a local nightclub. Around 2 AM, still dressed in her bunny costume, Song left the nightclub and went to a friend's house for 2 hours, before being dropped off outside her apartment. From that point, she was never seen again. A search of her apartment revealed that Song had made it inside because the false eyelashes she was wearing as part of her costume were on the nightstand. There was, however, no sign of a struggle. Shortly after her disappearance, a witness came forward saying she had seen a person matching Song's description in Philadelphia's Chinatown, some 200 miles from her apartment. The witness claimed the woman was calling out for help from a car driven by an unidentified male. In 2003, a bank robber by the name of Hugo Marcus Selensky was arrested, and when his property was searched, the remains of up to 12 people were found in his backyard. When questioned, Selensky told police that he and another man named Michael Jason Kukowski Jr. had kidnapped and murdered Song. Kukowski Jr. was unable to corroborate the story, however, as he was one of the people whose remains were found in Selensky's backyard. Selensky went on to tell police that he had murdered Kukowski Jr. after he found out that he kept the bunny ears as a souvenir from Song's Halloween costume. Despite Selensky's testimony, investigators have been unable to charge him with Song's murder due to a lack of evidence. He's still a suspect, however, Song's case remains unsolved. On Halloween night in 1977, 19-month-old Nima Louise Carter was abducted from her house in Lawton, Oklahoma. It was thought that since the windows in Carter's room were locked, the abductor may have been hiding in the closet waiting for her parents to fall asleep before taking the child. 23 days later, a group of children playing in a nearby abandoned house made a gruesome discovery when they opened an old refrigerator. Inside was the body of a young girl, later identified as Carter. A year and a half prior to Carter's abduction, 3-year-old twin sisters, Mary and Tina Carpenter, had been taken from their home and locked in a refrigerator at another abandoned house about 1 mile from where Carter's body was discovered. The sisters were found 2 days later. Tina had survived, but Mary had suffocated. Surviving sister Tina identified her abductor as Jacqueline Rubidoux, a friend of the family. However, Rubidoux was not charged due to a lack of evidence. She was free and soon after became the babysitter of Nima Louise Carter. Despite the eerie similarity of the crimes, Rubidoux never admitted to nor was ever convicted of Carter's murder. Some years later, she was retried for the murder of Mary Carpenter. This time she was found guilty and received a life sentence. On Halloween in 1979, the body of an unidentified female was found along Interstate 35 in Georgetown, Texas. The woman was believed to have been between the ages of 15 and 30 and had been strangled. She was discovered wearing nothing but a pair of orange socks. The following year, once again on Halloween, another young woman was found murdered. She too had been strangled. Her body was discovered by a truck driver along Interstate 45 near Huntsville in Walker County, Texas. The manager of a South End Golf station, along with 2 employees at the Hitch and Post truck stop, claimed to have seen the young woman while she was still alive that Halloween night. One reported that she asked for directions to Alice Prison, claiming she wanted to visit a friend there. She then set off towards the prison on foot. Investigators showed inmates and staff at the prison a photo of the victim, however no one claimed to have seen her. In 1982, serial killer Henry Lee Lucas confessed to the murder of the woman in the orange socks. He claimed he had picked her up in Oklahoma and drove her to Georgetown. Naturally, he became a suspect in the second woman's murder, however bite marks on her shoulder didn't match his dental charts. Lucas was eventually convicted of the murder of Orange Socks and was sentenced to the death penalty. However, 2 years later, Lucas recanted his confession and had his sentence reduced to life imprisonment. Further evidence was discovered showing that Lucas was likely working in Florida at the time of the murder and therefore probably not involved. Despite exhaustive investigations, neither of the victims have ever been able to be identified, and to this day their killer or killers remain on the loose. On Halloween in 1981, a 76-year-old nun was attacked and murdered while she slept at the St. Francis Convent in Amarillo, Texas. 5 weeks later, a 17-year-old intellectually disabled boy named Johnny Frank Garrett was arrested. He was convicted and sentenced to the death penalty. Garrett was granted a temporary reprieve after Pope John Paul II asked for clemency. The Texas Board of Pardons then held a vote on whether or not to reduce Garrett's sentence to a life in prison. The death penalty was retained unanimously. Garrett was eventually executed by lethal injection on the 11th of February 1992, despite maintaining his innocence the entire time. In 2008, University of Houston Law School graduate Jesse Quackenbush made a documentary about Garrett's case titled The Last Word. In it, he argues that Garrett was innocent of the crime. The documentary claims that the investigation was performed poorly and that law enforcement officials acted hastily in order to secure a quick conviction. It also claims that new evidence uncovered years after Garrett was executed actually proved that they had the wrong man. In Garrett's final statement before his death, he professed his innocence one last time, then swore he would get revenge on those responsible for his murder.
Hello, Ham Fam! How you all doing? It's nearly Halloween, and to celebrate, we've got a massive sale on all our merch. That's right, you can get your Pigletty mittens on one of our t-shirts or hoodies, 20% off. So there's a coupon code in the description box below, but you have to act quick. It's only for 3 days. It's from the 30th to the 1st of November. This is for Canada, America, and Australia only. If you're in the EU, your sale starts on the 3rd to the 5th of November, and there'll be a different coupon code. All the details are in the description box below. Check it out. Well, hey, there's another episode down. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this Halloween special. If you did, give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment down below. We love reading them all. And that's it for me. I'll see you all next time.